At what cost would you follow Jesus? At what cost would you follow Jesus? Maybe lose 3 hours on a Sunday morning? Maybe lose 3 hours on a midweek group? Lose a bit of money, start tithing? Lose a relationship? Lose some respect? Lose a job? Lose some comfort? What about lose your life? At what cost will you follow Jesus? To follow Jesus, you first have to know who Jesus is, and that's what Mark's been all about so far. So far, God's got it. As soon as Jesus was baptized, God declares that this is my son. The demons get it. They come out, the men screeching, saying, I know who you are, the Holy One of God. And recently we saw an account of a Gentile lady declaring, this is the Lord. You're the Son of David. But his closest friends, his disciples, are still saying, who is this? We're in the middle of Mark, where the theme of who is Jesus meets what Jesus has come to do. And the title of today's talk is that Jesus is the Messiah that leads the way for his disciples to follow. And the talk is split up in 3 parts, as all good talks are. Who is Jesus? What did Jesus come to do? And what does that mean for us? So firstly, the passage is on your sheet inside. Please read along with me. Firstly, my first point is Jesus is the Messiah. But before we understand who Jesus is, we have to kind of read this account of a blind man getting healed. Is this relevant to today's passage? Maybe on first glance it isn't. But let's read it and see the significance of it. So verse 22 on your sheet. They came to Bethsaida, and some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. When he had spit on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asked, "Do you see anything?" He looked up and said, "I see people. They look like trees walking around." Once more, Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. Then his eyes were opened. His sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Jesus sent him home, saying, "Don't even go into the village." Why did Jesus take two times to heal this person? Why wasn't it instant? You know, instant like healings. When the woman with internal bleeding is in the crowd and she's crawling on her hands and knees and she touches his cloak and straight away she's healed. Why isn't it like this? Why is it 2 times? Has Jesus lost his power? Well, let's continue and see what this means. Verse 27. Jesus and his disciples went on to the village around Caesarea Philippi. On the way he asked them, "What do people say I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" That's a question everyone's going to have to answer one day. And Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. You are the Messiah. With all the other alternatives disregarded, at least one other option. That he is the Christ, the anointed one, the Messiah, the promised Messiah, who will be born of a virgin, born in Bethlehem, descendant of David, show signs of healing and wonders. In his whole ministry, he will fulfill over 300 prophecies that he is the Messiah, the one who would save his people. The healing of the blind man is a miracle. It is a miracle. And so too is what happened in Peter. Both eyes were opened. The blind man's eyes were opened, and Peter's eyes were opened. It takes a work of God to open someone's eyes to see who Jesus is. And that's the first reason why that healing is significant. We'll touch back on it later on. So we're in this turning point in Mark's Gospel, where the theme, who is Jesus, meets what did Jesus come to do? And straight away, as soon as the penny drops and the disciples know who he is, straight away Jesus says, okay, this is what I've come to do. And it's not what they think. That little phrase in verse 27, see that little phrase, on the way? It's on the way. Might seem quite irrelevant. But it depends where they're on the way to. For example, I don't really get excited about holidays so much because I'm so busy, and I only get excited when I'm on the way to the airport. It depends on the destination of where they're going, right? If you're on the way to work, might be a bit glum. Where are they on the way to? Jerusalem. What does that mean? On the way to the cross. As they grow nearer to the crucifixion, Jesus teaches them what they need to know. And we are all on the way, aren't we? We're all on the way. As Sim said it eloquently, we're getting older. Most of us are 40. But we're all on the way to meet Jesus. Believe him or don't believe him, we're all on the way to meet Jesus. And today we're being taught something that's going to help us on the way. Maybe you've heard this sermon many times, just be reminded of it. Why are you being reminded of it? Because we have to act in a certain way before we meet Jesus. Second point, Jesus leads the way. Jesus leads the way. Verse 31. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed after 3 days and rise again. Must mean it's a necessity. This must happen. It has to happen. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Wouldn't advise that. But when Jesus turned and looked at the disciples, he rebuked Peter. I mean, rebuke is a very strong word, right? So Peter was really going at Jesus, right? Strongly. So rebuke Peter, saying, "Get behind me, Satan." He said, "You do not have the mind, the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." So we see the second reason why the healing is significant here. This event actually happened, that this healing happened, but it acts as an illustration of what is going on in the disciples. So, like the blind man, they see, great miracle, they see. But for now, they only see half. Just like the blind man only was able to see half originally, the disciples only see half the picture. They believe that Jesus is the Messiah, but they don't believe and agree on why he's come. They have a different idea what the Messiah should look like and should do and accomplish on earth. And this is just a thought. Really, this is quite a lateral thought, and sometimes that helps and sometimes it doesn't. So take this really just, you can just leave it, okay? But it just got me thinking whilst I was reading this. So you see how the blind man first opens his eyes, and what does he see? He sees people who look like trees, okay? What's another word for a cross in the Bible? Tree, right? And so he sees people walking around like trees. What are disciples about to be commanded to do? Take up their cross and follow. So possibly he's seeing something that the disciples were going to look like. Really, I'm not preaching hard on that. There's just a crazy lateral thought. So after Jesus' announcement and prediction of that he will die, and in such fashion, this happened 3 times in Mark. And after each time he says that, the disciples have a big faux pas and really muck up and really show their lack of understanding. So here, Peter gets rebuked. And the second time, Jesus predicts his death in Mark 9. The 12 argue who's the greatest. Jesus responds, well, anyone who wants to be the first must be the last. Servant of all. And the third time, in Mark 10, James and John ask for a place of honour in heaven. Again, Jesus responds about, no, you're called to serve if you want to be the greatest. The crucifixion is the peak of self-sacrifice and love. But the 12 are still caught up with this idea that they're going to be friends with the king. And if they're friends with the king, they're going to be honoured. Jesus' clear words can't get through Peter's preconceived ideas of what the Messiah should look like. He might have the idea of the prophecy in Daniel of the Son of Man. So Daniel 7:14, he was given authority, glory and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshipped him. His dominion is everlasting. Dominion that will not pass away. Suffering, that Jesus says, is the opposite of power. Rejection of what Jesus says he's going to be rejected, is the opposite of being given authority. And being killed is the opposite of passing away. So Peter can't reconcile these two. He's got this in his mind. He hasn't got the suffering servant in Isaiah in 52 and 53 in his mind. That the suffering servant must be despised, afflicted, and rejected. and oppressed. Jesus didn't come to save his people from the grips of the Roman Empire. He came to save them from their sin. He came to live the life that they failed to live, fulfill the law, fulfill the holy law, the requirements to be perfect in the eyes of God, and die the death that we deserve to die. The punishment that brought us peace was on him. And we're at peace with God if you trust in Christ. We are not enemies of God anymore, reconciled by grace alone. Peter didn't deliberately choose to reject God and accept Satan. He just let himself be concerned, not of things of God, but human concerns. How does this affect me? And Satan took advantage of it. There is a spiritual warfare all over Jesus' life, and it happens from day one. So Satan, straight away he uses Herod to try to kill off all the children under 2 in the region of Bethlehem. Get rid of Jesus straight away. Get rid of the problem. It's gone. Then he shows up when, after Jesus is baptized, he gets led into the Spirit by the Spirit into the wilderness, and that Satan tries to tempt him with the world. All this I'll give you if you will bow down and worship me. Jesus said to him, "Away from me, Satan." In Luke, we read that Satan left Jesus for an opportune time. Satan saw that this, when Jesus announces what he's going to do for the first time, is the opportune time. Tempt him with the world again. A shortcut for glory. And this wasn't going to work. This wasn't going to work. I mean, previously, Jesus just withdrew from 5,000 people who was going to forcibly make him king. Away from me, Satan. Get behind me, Satan. Because Jesus is concerned with the things of God, which is rescuing his people and making them know how to follow him. Making disciples. So thirdly, disciples follow Jesus' example. So verse 34 on your sheet, I'm going to go to verse 38. Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross and follow me. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels." Whoever wants to be my disciple. We know in the Great Commission we're called to make disciples of all nations. We like that. We like making disciples of all nations, but we can't make disciples if we're not disciples already. And to be a disciple, it means to be a committed learner, a student, a follower. That all sounds great. That's all like head knowledge. Great. But it quickly becomes practical. They must deny themselves. Deny is to have no association with someone, to completely disown yourself from someone. Deny. Who are they called to deny? Yourself. They're called to deny themselves. And this is a theme that goes throughout the New Testament. Paul writes in Ephesians, put off your old self. Take it off. Which has been corrupted by its deceitful desires. Deceitful means that we can get tricked easily and we won't even know it. It describes the spiritual battle that is going in on your life right now. There is a fight daily to deny yourself. Jesus wouldn't say deny yourself otherwise. The flesh and the spirit are at war and they want contrary things. There's a fight daily to deny yourself and choose Christ. To take up your cross and follow me. The only thing the cross meant was a means of execution by the Roman government. So for Jesus, it was a willingness to embrace official opposition, embrace shame, embrace suffering, embrace death. What does it mean for the disciples to take up their cross? The same. Total submission to the will of God. Not my will, but your will be done. Be willing to deny yourself to the point of death, which is a reality for the disciples. All died for following Jesus. A reality for the early church, and a reality for 360 million Christians today. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay our lives down for our brothers and sisters. We follow Jesus. We go to the cross. We carry our cross. We lay our lives down. So what will you have to deny yourself of? It's different for every situation. You might have to deny yourself of a way of life. If our new identity is a disciple, then our old self has to deny itself of things. So if we're called to embrace opposition, our old self has to deny itself of acceptance. If we're called to embrace opposition, then we need to deny ourselves of acceptance. We all like to be accepted and feel included, don't we? Sometimes there's a fear of people, they want to be accepted. That's a human thing. But we're called to embrace opposition. If we're to embrace shame, then our old self has to deny itself of respect. If we embrace shame, our old self has to deny itself of respect. if we are to embrace suffering, then our old self will have to deny itself of comfort. And when I said respect earlier, that we need to deny ourselves of respect, that's not... We're called to be respected by other people, like living godly lives. I'm saying more of a kind of a prideful respect, that you need to respect me because I'm so great. And I want people to respect me because of who I am. I'm talking that sort of respect. Acceptance, respect, and comfort are three things that really get in the way of denying ourselves, taking up a cross, and losing our life. Our old self screams when we don't get acceptance, respect, and comfort in many ways. Verse 35, whoever wants to save their life will lose it. Whoever loses their life for me and the gospel will save it. What good is it? That's one of my favourite phrases in the Bible. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? Our old self is tempted in the world in many, many ways. And we're tempted to kind of gain our own little version of the world, aren't we? Whatever that looks like. It's not the whole world, but it's a good chunk. And it looks good. I mean, we're tempted to get the house, to get the car, to get the wife, to get the husband, to get everything just perfect, like really perfect, like Instagram perfect. Everything. Everything's in order. The bank balance, the savings, everything looks good. You're healthy. Whatever it is, you go on the holidays. I mean, it's not the world, but it looks good. It's what you wanted to get from the world, and you got it. And all those things are great, and they're needed. But it depends on if that is going to serve the gospel, and it's going to distract you from the gospel. Are you going to follow that? Are you going to follow that? Or are you following Jesus? Can you do the same? Can you serve two things? I don't know. Jesus, it's pretty hard. The danger is, I'm not saying having a house is losing sight of the gospel. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that altogether, when you're pursuing these things, can we lose sight of the gospel? Can we lose sight of what's really important? What's great is when those things that we need to have are serving the gospel in some way. That every thought you have and desire and motive is fueled by the gospel. It's fueled by following Jesus. How can your holiday serve Jesus? How can your car serve Jesus? I don't know, okay? I'm just saying, here's some ideas. And when we don't lose our life and we don't follow Jesus, we are on the way of just rejecting the most important thing and losing the most important thing, which is our soul. And Jesus kind of paints this picture, which is a little bit crazy, of someone gaining everything. Like, think of someone who owns the Amazon, Apple together, BP with all its profits, whatever it is, and then get into heaven, realize, I've just neglected the most important thing. Can I buy my soul? It's ridiculous. Verse 38. If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with his holy angels. We end on a very practical situation, which gives us a good benchmark of where we're at with losing our life, denying ourselves and taking up a cross. Where we're at with acceptance, how much acceptance is important to us. Where we're at with comfort. Are you ashamed of Jesus? What's stopping us from telling our friends about Jesus? It's not the right time. It's not the right time. They need to do this in their life first before. Or are we ashamed? Only you can know that. Some of my worst feelings when I've left a conversation, left a party, and I know there was an open door and I didn't take it. And it's the last thing you want, isn't it? The worst kind of reception you want in heaven. For Jesus to be ashamed of you. Rather, you want Jesus to say, this is my disciple. This is John, my disciple. This is Alice, my disciple. My disciple. She followed me. Amen. That's what we want here. My disciple. So what's the conclusion? It's a demanding life, isn't it? It's very demanding, isn't it? It's very far from say this prayer and everything else has fallen in place. It's a summons for people to lose their life for what really matters. And here's the thing, we're going to fail. We're going to fail. Just like the disciples did. Peter declared it in Matthew, even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. We know what happened there. He did disown Jesus when Jesus was arrested. That did happen. He did disown. He didn't deny himself. There's going to be times when we want to embrace acceptance. We want to embrace respect and comfort in various ways. Just the comfort of having to cut 2 hours to yourself. Whatever it is, just the respect of someone that you're going to be working with. Just want people to like you a little bit too much. We're all going to fail. But just like there was for the disciples, there is grace for us. We are saved by grace, not by works. This is a very hard preaching. It's a very hard message. But Jesus does this because he loves you. He says this because he loves you. And he wants you to follow him because he wants you to be his disciples. And we're only doing what we have seen Jesus do for us. We're only doing what Jesus done for us. And most of us aren't going to pay the ultimate sacrifice. Some things may change in the UK. But for now, we're not paying the ultimate sacrifice. We're not suffering that much. But it's totally worth it, isn't it? It's totally, totally worth it. Why? Because we want to save our life. That's the motive, to save our life. We see the value of our life. We see the value of life, eternity spent with God. It's worth it.
Amen.
Paul says, I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it's the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes. We want to be unashamed of the gospel. That's what we're working towards. We want to be concerned with the things of God. We want to go to the gospel. We want to go where the gospel is. We want to proclaim the gospel, the very gospel that saved us, a wretched sinner. We want to proclaim that to others. And when we follow Jesus, we go to those people. We live those type of lives. And when we truly, truly grasp this, we will be like this man in Matthew 14. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought that field. Everything. He saw the value of the treasure in heaven, life with God. He sold everything for that purpose. And he went with joy. There's joy in suffering. Consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds. There's joy in losing. There's joy in denying yourself. So at what cost would you follow Jesus? Eternity is dependent on how you answer that. So please spend the next 15 minutes and your life thinking about that. It really matters, and it's an ultimatum, really. We are saved by grace. We are saved by grace. But just try to deny yourself of acceptance. Deny yourself of comfort. Deny yourself of respect. This need of people to like you and think you're great. These things are going to get in the way of you living for Christ. Okay? Thank you very much.